Alright, so turn one. Well, for turn one, it's obviously very important to have the car really straight before you start braking for turn two. Some people may tend to sort of exaggerate that and not only want to have the car perfectly straight as they're braking, but they'll also try to have the car parallel to the edge of the track. So it's very common to see people turning in pretty late, missing the apex of turn one, just to get the car straight and also parallel to the edge of the track. But really, you don't need to do that, and you can carry quite a lot more speed into turn one if you only focus on getting the car straight, but still at a bit of an angle before you start braking. What I tend to do is turn in right at the end of the pit wall on the right side. So right around here is where I would start to turn in, still full throttle. Full throttle, and I'll typically start a lift maybe a few meters after I go over the striped line, the striped white line that runs across the track right in front of my car right now. So just a few meters after that, or around here, I'd lift off completely, try to run that inside curb, and just after you run it, maybe a few meters after that, you want to start getting on the brakes with the car and your wheel perfectly straight. But obviously, as you can see, I'm at quite a bit of an angle. I'm not really at the edge of the track and parallel to it. I'm at quite a bit of an angle, but the main thing is to keep that angle and keep it perfectly straight. And that'll just bring you right, pretty much right to the end of that white sort of bit of curbing on the right side. And then eventually, obviously, you'll turn in for turn two. You can there's two lines you can get through here, and I think they're both pretty quick. The first one is to treat it as a double apex, in that there's two bits of curbing on the left side that stick out a little bit. And you want to get as close as both of them as possible. So the first one was back there, and the second one would be right here. And that's one of the lines. The second line would be to just focus on that second apex. And I find, obviously, the first way, you can make up a little bit of time through the corner itself. Then in the second one, you get a little bit of extra exit speed. But in the end, they're both, I think, just as quick. So whichever suits you best, you should stick with. Then for turn three, so you arrive in third gear. I'll typically start braking a few meters after the start of the white curbing on the left side. And I'll drop down 2 gears, right down into first gear. You want to turn in, but through here, as well as through the next corner, turn 4. I find it's very helpful to carry the brakes pretty much all the way to the apex of the corner. But you have to be very careful with that because it's very easy to overdo the brakes. So really you want to be on the brakes pretty hard initially when you have the car in a straight line. Then as soon as you start to turn in, you want to try to not get completely off the brakes, but still leave a bit of pressure there. Just don't overdo it, and you'll typically carry it all the way into the apex of the corner. That'll help the car turn in a little bit better. And then on exit, you can use all of this curb on the left side. If you got a good exit from the last corner, you might get up to second gear, into third gear, I mean, for turn 4. If you do, typically brake a little bit before the green tires on the left side, and I'll drop down into second gear. So through here, as I said, as well as in the last corner, you want to carry the brakes for quite a long time, pretty much right up till you hit that apex. You want to get on the throttle as early as you can to use quite a bit of space on exit. Through here again, I think there's 2 different lines that are probably just as quick. One is to use all of the space, even go as far as to almost touch the sand on the left side, and the other one, the gravel, I mean, and the other one is to not use quite as much space, but cover a lesser distance. Whichever one you want, you can stick with. I think they're just as quick. Then after that corner, you'll be shifting up into third before you get to the bridge, and keeping the car in third. I'll typically start a turn in, turn 5, again a few meters before the start of the barrier on the left side of the actual bridge itself. So around here is where I would start a turn in. But again, similar in a way similar to turn 1. I'm turning in still full throttle, and once I've turned in, I'll get completely off the throttle and just coast the car all the way to that curbing on the right side. If I did it correctly, I should most laps be able to get completely back on the throttle at around this point. So just a few meters after I've got to that curbing on the right side. So around here, I'd be able to get completely on the throttle. Most of the time, I also try to not be over the curb itself, just on the white line, simply because right at the end of the curb, there's a really nasty bump. I don't know if you can see it, right at the corner of where the curbing ends. And you really don't want to hit that because it'll damage your front wing a little bit and bounce the car up and down and limit your grip. So then setting up for turn 6, you want to use all of the track's width as possible. So use all of the concrete on the left side before entry. The way I'll typically drive this is keeping so you arrive here in 4th gear, I believe. So I'll drop down into 3rd gear and just brake a little bit, just brush the brakes as I turn simultaneously, just before that curbing starts on the left side. And you want to, I find it's a little bit more consistent to not necessarily try to get on that concrete beyond the curb on the inside. I find it's a little bit more consistent to just use the curb itself and not go beyond that, simply because there's a bit of the actual concrete beyond the curb is a little bit lower. So if you do get on it, the car starts to bottom out on the curb, and it doesn't turn as well as it would if it was only the wheels on the ground. So most of the time, I'll try to avoid using that concrete on the very inside. You want to get on the throttle as early as you can. You'll find you'll go right over to the left side of the track pretty quickly most laps. You might even get on the grass a little bit, but just don't overdo it and get the off track, and you should be fine. So through that last section, if you also got a good run out of there, you might be able to get up into 4th gear. If you do, I'll start braking again, maybe a few meters after the curbing starts on the right side here. I'll drop down a gear into 3rd. And through here, I find it helps to use the brakes very lightly, but also maybe even brush them if you feel the car isn't turning enough. And you want to run over even the white part of the curbing beyond the yellow and red bit. So this is where your apex would ideally be. And again, get on the throttle as early as you can, still in 3rd gear. Use all of that exit curbing. I think the only caveat here would be to maybe not use the white part of the curbing here, simply because it sort of slopes outwards, and it might pull the car outwards a little bit. So most of the time, I'll try to just keep it on the regular bit of the curbing, not the white bit. Then through this sort of high-speed S section, you don't really need to get the car all the way to the left side of the track. You can pretty much keep it right in the middle or even tighter than that before you enter it. It's obviously full throttle, and because it's blind, you sort of have to guess a little bit where the next bit of the corner is. But if you do it enough, you'll get a feel for it and hit it most times. And through here again, you don't want to use the actual white concrete on the left side, again because the car will bottom out a little bit and you lose a little bit of speed doing that. Then for the final corner, which is pretty tricky and hard to get down consistently at first. I think the reason for that is that first of all there aren't any good braking references, so you might be a little bit inconsistent in how much speed you carry into it lap after lap. But what I'm using for the moment is there's sort of the track's a little bit brownish, and there's like some spots of brown on the track right in front of me on the outside of it. I don't know if everyone can see that, but I think it's not a great reference, but it'll have to do. It's the best I've got, and I'll typically start braking just at the end of it. Right here is where I'd get on the brakes. As you get on the brakes, it's important to keep it all the way to the right side of the track, right on the edge, and look out for your apex pretty far into the corner, because again, there's no turn-in reference, and it's a long corner, so it's sort of hard to know when you have to turn in. But again, the best way is to just simply look as far ahead as you can, look at your apex, spot it, and that'll vaguely tell you when you have to turn in. And through this corner in particular, you'll find, because it's such a long corner, even if you got off the brakes well and the car rotated properly, you might not get a lot of rotation in the car. And you might get good rotation in the car initially when you got off the brakes, but later on, because it's such a long corner, the car will be back to understeering. So I find if you've polished up most of the general aspects of the track, you might find that those extra hundredths and maybe even extra tenths, simply by using the brakes very lightly midway through the corner, so just brushing them to get the nose to tuck in. And ideally, what you're looking for your apex to be is that bit of the curbing that goes from darker to lighter on the inside. So right here is where your apex would be. If you carried the right amount of speed into the corner, you should be able to get on the throttle even a little bit earlier than this. So you'd already be on the throttle just to here before you actually get to your apex. But it's very important to sort of have a very wide entry into here and not ride that inside curve the whole way around, just because you'll be on a really tight line, and two, the curve's pretty bumpy and it might give you a little bit of oversteer. And then on exit, you have to play chicken with the wall a little bit and just get as close as you can to it. And also, it's also important to, even if you feel you don't need to use all of the space on exit, it's best to just straighten your wheel so that you do use all the space. And that'll basically just train you to straighten your wheel while you're accelerating, because it's very easy to lose a bit of speed going down the straight just because you got a bit of wheel spin because you kept too much lock on the steering wheel as you throttled out of the corner. But yeah, that would be the lap. Unless anyone has any questions, I'll do the full speed sort of demo flyer lap. So yeah, question away.
On the last corner, do you trail brake into the turn, or do you just get off.
Yeah,
the coast.
a little bit initially, but as I said, because it's such a long corner, you'll find that even if you got the car rotating properly at the beginning of the corner by trail braking, later on in the corner, the car will be back to its usual lazy understeering self. So you need to maybe even brush the brakes further on in the corner. But I do trail brake, but not in the sense that I keep the brakes on all the way to the apex. So I'll trail brake lightly initially and then brush the brakes halfway through the corner.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks.
Yep. Anyone else?
After turn 1, for some reason I start bouncing like crazy, and I'm trying to figure out why.
So as you're accelerating out of turn 1?
Yeah, I go into turn 1, and I start just kind of bouncing after the apex of the turn.
As you're on the brakes, or just as you're coasting before you get on the brakes?
If I coast all the way, I'm okay, but if I try to go too fast, I start bouncing. Going into turn 2, between turn 1 and turn 2.
Do you notice the bouncing just because the car seems to be going up and down, or because it seems to be getting unsettled?
It gets unsettled, exactly, and then you do a side spin. I've seen a lot of people do it.
Yeah. I don't think that's necessarily the track being particularly bumpy through there. I think it's more the fact that you'll typically start to get on the brakes with maybe just a tiny bit of a steering lock on, and that's what'll get the rear to step out, not the actual bumpiness of the track.
Okay.
But yeah, because honestly, it's not something I notice, the bumpiness through there. You notice it through other parts of the track, but not particularly through there. Anything else? Or should I get going?
Let her go.
Let her rip.
All right, let's go. Alright, that was a lap. I lost nearly a tenth in that left-hander after the S, but it was pretty good otherwise. Yeah, so, and any questions? Any additional questions?
So for that first turn, are you not lifting at all until you pass that first inside curb?
Yeah, I definitely lift before that. So I'll turn in, and I'll typically lift right around this striped white line that runs across the track. Maybe, most of the time, a little bit after that. But around there is a good reference. And
Whoopsies.
so I'll lift at around here. And you want to let the car, you don't really want to get back on the throttle ever. You just want to coast all the way to the point where you start to get on the brakes around here, more or less. Yeah.
I guess it just sounded like you were more on the throttle through here than you were.
Yeah, the replays are weird in that aspect. It always sounds like people are on and off the throttle. But yeah, you just want to get off the throttle around that stripe line and let it coast until you hit the brakes.
Thanks.
Yeah, no worries.
What's the usual fuel load for a race?
So yeah, you can make it on 2.1.
Yeah, well, yeah, there you go.
Awesome, thanks.
You can make it, but just you'll start a sputter turn 1, but you should be able to make it.
I'd just like to say thank you again to Johnny for taking the time to give us a walkthrough. If you would like more help from Johnny, he also does private coaching sessions. You can find his contact information down below in the description if you're interested.